It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, something she and her best friend had talked about for years. At 26, she finally made it happen. She and Alyssa flew out to California, rented a small Airbnb, and planned everything around one goal: experiencing Coachella for the very first time. It wasn't just a festival for them, it felt like freedom, like stepping into a world completely separate from real life. The first 2 days felt unreal in the best possible way. Massive crowds stretched in every direction, music echoed from multiple stages, and people moved like they had no responsibilities at all. Everywhere she looked was color, movement, and noise. They laughed constantly, took pictures, ate overpriced food, and stayed out until they could barely stand. By the end of each night, they were exhausted, but it was the kind of exhaustion that felt worth it. By the third day, they were drained but determined not to miss a second. That was the day they decided to take something they had talked about before the trip. They had both agreed to save it for the final day, thinking it would enhance the experience. Late that afternoon, before one of the biggest sets, they took it. At first, nothing happened. They walked through the crowd, joking that maybe it was weak or outdated. Everything felt normal. But then, slowly, it began to hit. The world around her shifted. Music felt deeper, lights felt sharper, and everything seemed more alive. For a while, it felt incredible, like she had stepped into something beyond reality. But then something changed. At first, it was just a feeling, a small discomfort she couldn't explain. Then she saw him. A man standing in the crowd, not far away, staring in her direction. He didn't look threatening at first. Just still. Out of place. Dark clothes in a sea of color. She ignored it. Then she saw him again. And again. Near a drink stand. Between stages. At the edge of a fence. Every time she turned, he was there. Not close, but always visible. Always watching. When she finally told Alyssa, it was brushed off as paranoia or the effects of what they had taken. She tried to believe that. She really did. But the feeling didn't go away. The high started to turn. What was once fun became overwhelming. Her heart raced too fast, her jaw tightened, and the crowd felt too loud, too close, too much. And then, in the middle of everything, he came closer. This time, he didn't stay in the background. He approached her directly, smiling like he knew her. He tried to dance beside her, speaking into her ear over the music. Compliments. Questions. Personal things that felt too familiar. He asked if she was alone. She forced a polite smile and said she was there with her friend, trying not to escalate anything. But when she turned to find Alyssa, her stomach dropped. Alyssa was gone. Panic hit instantly. She spun in place, searching through the crowd, her vision already distorted. The man noticed immediately. He asked if she had lost her friend and offered to help. Something about the way he said it made her skin crawl. She said no and pushed away from him. He didn't stop her, but she felt his presence behind her as she left. She finally broke through the crowd and collapsed into a quieter patch of grass. Her body felt wrong, like it wasn't responding properly. Her vision warped, everything around her bending and shifting. That's when fear truly set in. This wasn't just overwhelming anymore. Something was wrong. She called Alyssa repeatedly until one call finally connected. Her voice shook as she begged her to come find her. It took time, but Alyssa eventually found her and immediately knew something was wrong. Without arguing, they left the festival early. The walkout felt endless. Every sound felt too loud. Every person felt too close. She kept scanning the crowd, half expecting to see him again. But he was gone. Back at the Airbnb, exhaustion hit like a wall. Her body felt completely drained, her mind still unsettled. She collapsed into bed, too tired to think clearly, slipping into a strange half-sleep where everything felt distant and unstable. Then she woke up. She didn't know what pulled her out of sleep. But when she opened her eyes, she saw a figure standing in the doorway. Tall. Silent. Still. At first, her mind couldn't process it. She thought maybe it was Alyssa. But as her eyes adjusted, her body went cold. It was him. The man from the festival. Standing just a few feet away in the dark. She screamed instantly, pulling the covers over herself as panic took over. She screamed until Alyssa ran in and flipped on the lights. The room was empty. No one was there. Alyssa tried to calm her down, saying it had to be the drugs, that it was a hallucination. She wanted to believe that. It would have made everything easier. But it didn't feel like a hallucination. It felt real. Too real. They stayed awake for hours after that, the lights on, trying to talk and steady themselves. Eventually, exhaustion took over again, and they both drifted off. The next morning came with a scream. Alyssa was shaking her awake, standing near the doorway, staring at the floor. There were muddy boot prints. They started at the front door, moved down the hallway, and stopped exactly at the bedroom doorway. The same place she had seen the figure standing. Then they turned. And walked back out. Everything in her body went cold. This wasn't imagined. This wasn't a dream. Someone had been inside the house. And they hadn't taken anything. They had just been there. They checked everything immediately. Doors, windows, rooms. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was disturbed. And somehow, that made it worse. It meant the person hadn't come for belongings. They had come for them. They packed in silence, fear replacing every other emotion. Within minutes, they were gone. They contacted the Airbnb host and sent photos, trying to prove what had happened, but all they wanted was distance. They just needed to leave. Even after they got home, the feeling never fully went away. What haunted her most wasn't just what she saw, but the unanswered question that followed her ever since. How had he found them? And if it really was him? How long had he been watching before she ever noticed? It was supposed to be a normal summer trip. Valentina invited him to stay with her family in San Diego, California, and his parents insisted he go. They thought he needed a break from work and the quiet routine he had fallen into. So on a Friday afternoon, he landed after a long cross-country flight, tired and slightly disoriented. Valentina texted him immediately, "Come outside, we're here." She arrived with her father in an old Toyota. The drive to the beach house was calm, almost too normal, like nothing could possibly go wrong. But when they reached the villa by the ocean, something about it felt different, too quiet, too isolated, despite its beauty. The house sat right by the beach, wide and open, with a peaceful view of the water. Valentina's father carried his luggage inside and showed him to a guest room on the lower level. It was separated from the rest of the house upstairs, quiet and private, with a window facing the shoreline. At first, it felt comfortable. He unpacked slowly, trying to settle in. Then came the knock. Valentina was at the door, asking him to meet her family. He briefly met her mother, a kind older woman who made him feel welcome. After that, Valentina quickly changed plans and insisted they go to the beach before sunset. The moment they arrived, the atmosphere shifted. The beach was crowded, loud, alive with people. Valentina asked him to take photos for her. He agreed, snapping picture after picture as the sun began to set behind her. He took nearly 100 shots, trying to get the perfect ones. But when he reviewed them later, something felt wrong. In almost every single photo, there was a man in the background. Sometimes he was standing too still. Sometimes he was looking directly at them. He didn't blend into the crowd like everyone else. He stood out, always watching. When he looked up from the phone, the man was gone. He tried to mention it to Valentina, but she laughed it off, saying he was overthinking. Still, the feeling didn't leave him. It stayed in the back of his mind, growing heavier. That night, they went to a bonfire on the beach. It was late, around midnight. People were drinking, talking, laughing under the firelight. For a while, he tried to enjoy it. But while on a phone call with his boss, he noticed something on the edge of the beach. A dark figure standing still, watching him. He paused mid-conversation. His boss asked if everything was okay, and he quickly lied, saying it was just noise and distraction. But when he looked again, the figure was gone. He didn't tell anyone. When the party ended, Valentina's friend drove them home. On the way, Valentina asked why they didn't walk back along the beach. He brushed it off, saying she was too drunk. But the truth was simple, he didn't want to go near the place where he saw that figure. That night, he slept in Valentina's room instead of the guest room. He didn't feel safe downstairs anymore. The next day, he woke up sick and exhausted. He stayed in bed most of the day while Valentina and her family went out for dinner. The house felt too quiet when they left. Then, that night, everything changed. He woke up suddenly to a strange tapping sound, like something hitting glass. When he opened his eyes fully, the sound stopped. And that's when he saw him. Outside the window stood the same man from the beach. Wearing a black hood. Completely still. Watching. Before he could even react, the figure moved, running up the exterior stairs toward the front door. A second later, the door opened. But no one was supposed to be home. Panic hit instantly. He rushed to his bedroom door and pressed against it, locking it with his weight. The house went silent. No footsteps. No movement. Just stillness that felt wrong. Then came the handle. Someone was trying to get in. Slow at first, then harder. Testing the lock. Pulling it. Pressing against it. He didn't move. He called 911 with shaking hands. Minutes later, sirens approached. The pressure on the door stopped. Police arrived and cleared the house, but they found nothing. The man was gone. Valentina and her family returned shortly after, confused and frightened. But the real shock came when Valentina screamed from her room. Inside, they found a hidden camera, pointing into the bedroom. Then they noticed something else, her clothes and bathing suits were missing. Taken. Not stolen randomly, but deliberately removed. The police took the camera as evidence. The house was checked, secured, and locked down again. But nothing about that night felt normal anymore. He stayed for the rest of the trip, but sleep never felt safe again. And even after returning home, one question never left his mind. How long had someone been watching them, before he ever noticed? And more importantly, had it ever really stopped? It was meant to be a quiet escape. A short trip to Palm Springs for him and his girlfriend, just a few days away from work, stress, and routine. They wanted nothing more than a private place to relax, sit by a pool, and disappear from the world for a while. They booked a modern Airbnb on the edge of the city, where houses became sparse and the desert slowly took over everything. The listing promised privacy, calm, and isolation. Perfect for a couple looking to unwind. When they arrived, the place looked exactly like the photos. Clean white walls, glass doors opening to a private pool, and a backyard that stretched directly into empty desert. No visible neighbors. No nearby noise. Just silence. At first, everything felt normal. They settled in, went out for dinner, came back, and went to sleep without thinking twice. That night, he woke up around 1 or 2 a.m. to a faint sound outside. A soft thump against the house, like something brushing the wall. He told himself it was just the desert settling. Houses like this made strange noises at night. He ignored it and went back to sleep. The next day, they spent most of their time by the pool. At one point, he thought he heard something far off in the distance, like a voice carried through the empty land. His girlfriend heard it too, but they both laughed it off. There was nothing around them except sand and silence. No roads. No people. Nothing close enough to matter. Still, something about it lingered. That night, they heard a few more small noises. Nothing clear. Just faint sounds that could easily be explained away if they tried hard enough. But on the third night, everything changed. Around midnight, he was still awake when he noticed light slipping through the blinds. At first, he thought it was a passing car. But the light didn't fade. It stayed. He got up and peeked through the blinds. One of the motion lights in the backyard had turned on. He watched it for several seconds before it suddenly shut off. 10 seconds later, another light turned on, this time farther along the side of the house. His stomach tightened immediately. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt like movement. Controlled. Intentional. Like someone was walking around the property, triggering each light one by one. He woke his girlfriend. She saw it too. Another light turned on near the fence. Then another closer to the pool. It looked like someone circling the house. She told him to close the blinds immediately. Her voice was sharp now, scared. They closed them completely and sat in silence, listening to the house. Then he said what neither of them wanted to hear. He was going to check outside. She grabbed his arm and told him not to, but he went anyway. Quietly, he went into the kitchen and picked up a knife without telling her. Then he stepped outside. The desert was completely still. No wind. No movement. No sound except the faint hum of the house. He walked slowly around the backyard, scanning the fence line and corners near the shed. At first, he saw nothing. Nothing at all. Then he noticed footprints in the sand. Clear shoe prints. Not animal tracks. His pulse spiked instantly. The footprints led along the side of the house and stopped directly in front of the small shed. He followed them carefully, trying to stay quiet. The prints ended right at the shed door. The doors were closed. He stood there, staring, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then, from inside the shed, a voice spoke. Calm. Controlled. "Excuse me, could you open the door, please?" He froze completely. Before he could react, a soft laugh came from inside. Quiet, almost amused. He didn't answer. He turned and ran. Back into the house. Sliding door slammed shut. Locked. His girlfriend saw his face immediately and knew something was wrong before he even spoke. He told her someone was in the shed. She panicked instantly. He called 911. While he was on the phone, the outside lights flickered again, one by one, like something was still moving around the house, just out of sight behind the blinds. That made it worse. Not knowing where it was made everything feel closer. Police arrived after about 20 minutes. The wait felt endless. When they finally entered the property, they checked the backyard first, then the shed. It was empty. But inside, they found signs someone had been there, trash, food wrappers, and signs of recent use. The officers said it likely belonged to someone who had been staying on and off in the area, using vacant or isolated properties. Then came something worse. Behind the couch inside the house, they found a dirty baseball cap. Neither of them recognized it. The officer said it was possible someone had been inside the home itself. Not just the shed. Inside the house. At some point during their stay. That detail changed everything. They packed immediately. No hesitation. No discussion. While leaving, they kept trying to contact the Airbnb host. Messages were seen but never answered. No explanation. No reply. Nothing. Just silence. They left that night and stayed in a motel instead, just to be somewhere else, anywhere else. The rest of the trip didn't matter anymore. What stayed with them wasn't just what they heard in the shed. It was the feeling that they had been watched long before they ever noticed anything wrong. And the worst part was the thought that someone had been close enough to walk through the house while they slept. And they would never know exactly when.